Welcome back to the channel. If you're new to the channel, then welcome. It's been a while since I made a YouTube video, especially with programming. But I am back and I am going to be doing more of it. So this is going to be kind of like just a repeat of an older series where I was trying to show how to make a Discord bot. Um, but that was with .NET. Which is C Sharp using Discord.net. I'm going to be doing it again, but I'm going to be using Discord.js, meaning that we're going to be dealing with JavaScript. However, we're actually going to be dealing with TypeScript. So if you don't know what TypeScript is basically an advanced form of JavaScript. Uh, they're TypeScript is built on top of JavaScript. It enables us to do some fancy things, such as having access to making interfaces, which is a really great thing to have when you're programming. It helps you structure classes, it helps you structure typings, as well as just other stuff. It's just a really good structuring tool to have. We also have access to a keyword called enums, numerals. They basically allow us to create kind of like a constant variable that you would often see in JavaScript. Oftentimes you'll see a constant variable that's all uppercase with underscores for spaces. Those are kind of like those are like enums basically. That's the best way to describe them. We can basically create a variable that is a enum and have all those values within there. It helps keep things a bit more organized. But all you just need to know is that we're technically just dealing with JavaScript. It's just going to be some new features, some things that you really can't do in JavaScript because of how it's built, but that's what we're going to be doing. So I'm also going to be showing you how to do it a bit differently than what most YouTubers will probably do. They usually do something more basic. I'm going to be doing something more advanced. We're going to be doing a lot of like just advanced topics. One of them is going to be how we handle caching and what we're going to use caching for, basically. So let's just start. We're going to need to set up our project first. So let's open up our terminal, and I'm also going to be using Visual Studio Code as my text editor. Visual Studio Code is a really good text editor. It's probably one of the best um, for right now. I know that Fleet is gaining more popularity. If you don't know what Fleet is, then you probably never heard of JetBrain. JetBrain is one of the top IDE like creators or inventors when it comes to any kind of IDEs. If you know of IntelliJ, JetBrain is the one that created that. Writer is another great one for C Sharp. You also have ReSharper, which was the original C Sharp one, their IDE, but then they rebuilt it as Razor, or not Razor. Oh my God, I forgot the name of it. But anyways, so I'll be using Visual Studio Code. All the text editors when it comes to JavaScript and TypeScript, it's the exact same way. We're going to just be using command line stuff to set up our project and all that stuff. So let's just begin. So first thing, of course, is we actually need to initialize our npm package. I'm going to be using npm. You can use Yarn. Yarn's another great one to use. You could use Bun as well, which is a newer environment. Bun is more for Mac and Linux right now. They don't really have any support for Windows just yet, except for WSL, which is Windows Subsystem for Linux. But npm or Node JS is probably the most common environment for JavaScript as of right now. So I'm just going to show that. So we're going to do npm init -y, meaning that we're going to set up all the defaults here. There we go. So we have our package.json file now. So then let's just install our packages. So let's first set up TypeScript first. So what we're going to do is npm install TypeScript. There we go. Now that we have that, then we can do here, I have to use npx, but if you already have TypeScript enabled globally, you don't need to add the npx, but we're going to do npx tsc --init. This will create a tsconfig.json. This is kind of our TypeScript configuration file. We might do a few things in here, but it's just there to enable us to use TypeScript. Okay. Next, we're going to need to do is quickly install some types. So TypeScript, as the name suggests, it handles types. So JavaScript doesn't really know how to handle types or is not type sensitive, whereas TypeScript is a bit more type sensitive. It's better for doing more object oriented programming because of the typing. Typing is just a really strong thing to have for object oriented. So what we're going to do is npm install. We're going to do at types. Actually, we're going to install this into our dev dependency section. So we're going to do dash capitalize D at types, and we're going to add node in. This will give us all the typings for regular node. Okay, there we go. We're going to also install. So now we're going to just install discord.js. So let's do that. There we go. And discord.js is actually built on top of TypeScript, so it already has the typing that we need for it. So we don't need to add any extra packages for discord.js, which is beautiful. I enjoy when there's packages that's already built on top of TypeScript. So whenever we're using a TypeScript project, we don't have to install any extra typings. It usually always gets to this point where it starts to slow down. But let me explain what our bot and how we're going to do this differently than other YouTubers. First things first is we're going to have something known as a cache manager. So our cache manager, basically what it does is it caches all of our commands, events, monitors, tasks, everything that we need for the bot. It's going to cache it into its memory. This actually helps improve speed a little bit. Instead of having to go to the file and call on it, that file's already within our data inside our memory. So all we gotta do is call on that memory and then say, hey memory, we want to invoke this function. So it's going to invoke it for us. So that's why it's called cache, and we're going to call it cache manager. So that's how we're going to do it. Is literally everything's going to be built on top of this cache manager. We're also going to make our client, or variable for our Discord client, we're going to make that actually global. It's going to be a constant throughout the entire project. This allows us to call on it whenever we need to, instead of having to pass it through like you've probably done in a JavaScript project for a Discord bot. A lot of times what a lot of YouTubers will do is that they will have that variable be passed throughout into the methods until it reaches to where we need it to be. That's kind of more for if you're scared of someone else like going into it and trying to modify your variable, like with eval. Eval is a very like dangerous command to have on any bot, but that's kind of what the point of doing it that way. We're not going to have the eval command because it's just way too dangerous to have, especially if you don't know what you're doing. Eval is more for just developer purposes. That's really all it is. But anyways, we have discord.js installed. Let's add a few more in. We're going to also install .env. So let's install that. This will allow us to use .env files, so we're going to put all of our configurations in there. We're also need to have is npm install globe. This is a great tool if you're going to do what we're doing, which is we are going to search through the file system and search for certain files to load it into our cache. Globe, it makes it a little bit easier for us to do that. Okay. And we also going to install, I'm going to install a logger. You don't have to have it, but it's always nice to have your own custom logger, because then you can have some information in there. So I'm going to install Winston in here. There we go. And we're about finished with our command line here. Actually, we need one more, which is going to be npm install ts node. And you can make this global, or we don't have to install this, and we can just use npx. npx is another great way of doing it, but I like to install it just in case. So we're going to do npm install ts node. It just allows us to run TypeScript projects as it is. if we weren't to have this, how we would have to run it is that we would have to build it into a JavaScript files, and then we can run it normally. But since that's kind of redundant, we can just use CS Node and just run the TypeScript files as is. Okay, so then we don't need our console here anymore. So let's first off start making our folders real quick. So we're gonna have an SRC folder here. Perfect. And in here, we're just going to add some folders in. So the first one's going to be base. So we're going to make all of our commands or events, modules, or yeah, basically they're modules. They're all going to be using a class-based system. We're going to use abstract classes to make them. I'll explain what abstract is once I get to there. But we're going to have basis. We're going to have a section for context because we're going to create our own context, make it a little bit easier for us to handle certain things. Then we're gonna have core. So core is like the core of the project. These are kind of like some utility files, or they're more for like our constants, our caching. Those are going to go into here. It's kind of the core of the project. Okay, and then we're going to add in is modules. So this is all of our commands, our events, our monitors, and tasks. Okay, modules. And we're just going to have another folder just called utils just in case. There we go. And we're actually going to make another folder, and we're actually going to call this bot, because we're also going to be handling databases in here eventually. So we're actually going to put all these file or folders inside of bot. Because then what we can do here is then make a new folder called database. And then basically we're separating them all. This folder will handle all of our database stuff. That's kind of where all it is. It's outside of the bot folder, and we can still call on it later. We're actually going to be using functions. Like we're going to export these functions out of this folder, and then we can use it anywhere in our bot folder. This is just an easier way of doing everything. Okay, so there we go. So let's make our caching file. So we're going to go into core, and we're going to just create a new file. It's going to be called cache.ts. Okay, perfect. So now what we're going to do is we're going to create a class. So what we're going to do is export class cache manager. Okay, so if you don't know TypeScript, it's very simple. It's a little bit more simplified than JavaScript. So in JavaScript, how you would export something would be module.exports, and then whatever it is, you have that equal sign. Instead of doing that, we could just use the keyword called export, as you can see. So now this is being exported from the file. So I can go into any file and then call on it. Let's real quick add our constants. So it's going to be constants.ts. Let's go ahead and create our Discord bot real quick. So we're going to do export const Discord equals a new, it's going to be a new client. Okay. And I just need to do that. Okay. And we're going to have our intents. So we need the intent bit field flags. What we need is, of course, message content. We're going to need to have intents. Oh, wait. It needs to be, yeah, we need the pipe. Intents, bit field. We're going to need to have also in here guild. It's just going to be guilds for now. But if you're going to use text commands, you will need to have guild messages as well. But this is good for now, at least to test and make sure everything is working. That's all we need. And we're going to also do is export const bot cache equals a new, it's going to be a cache manager. Okay, there we go. So now our client side for Discord and our bot cache is now global throughout the project. So we can just call on these variables and it knows exactly what we want. Okay, so let's go back in here. So how we're going to do our caching is we're actually going to be using collections. This is something from Discord. It's basically using mapping or map as the basis of the class or the technology, and we can basically store data through there. It's a very simple and easy system to understand. So what we're going to do here is we're going to use a visibility modifier, accessory, SS or modifier. Basically what it means is how it's being viewed, or if it can be get or it can be set, like all that. So what we're going to do is private commands underscore commands. I'll explain what this means in a real quick second. What we're going to do is string any, and we're going to do a new collection. So let me explain the what's going on here. So we have something that is private. So private means that within this class here, for example, only this class can actually access the commands variable. No other place can access it, not another class, not another file can access this except for this. Now, if we want another class or file to be able to mess around with this variable, we would change private to public, basically meaning that it can be get or set. There's other visibility modifiers. I like to call them visibility modifiers because it makes more sense. But there's other ones, like in C#, you also have internal, which means that within only this project it can be accessed it, because C# kind of has other projects. They have your project, then you have the smaller projects within it, uh, and then there's also, you got like protected as well. Protected basically prevents it being set, but it can be accessed anywhere else, like a get. Public just means that it can be get or set within that project, and then there's some other ones. But private here just means that only this class can mess with it. Okay? So we're going to do a private events. We're going to do collection here, string any new collection. So you may be wondering what the arrows or the carets mean, because this is something that JavaScript doesn't have. Or it does, but you hardly ever use it. So this is basically a generic type. Collection has a generic type, as you can see here. It says alias, class collection, carets, K, and V. These are kind of telling us that, hey, it's a generic type. K represents the key, and V represents the value. This is a collection or a map uses a key value system where you have the key, that's the name, and then it has the data, which is the value. So when you call on the key, you get the key you want, you get the value you want. And that's how it is. It's very simple to use. JSON is also a key value system. Anything that has a key and a value, or it has a name and then data, that's a key value system. Okay, so we have that, but that's basically what it is. So we're basically saying that our key is going to be a string, and our value is any. We're actually going to change the any type to a more defined, which is going to be our base classes, like base command, base event, and we're going to change those, but we have to create those, which we're not going to do right now because that'll be a little bit later on. So we're going to have monitors. I'll explain what a monitor is, but it's very simple. It's just like how the name suggests. It basically monitors different actions that are being taken place. So example here is like in our interaction create event, we can have a monitor that's only specifically looking for slash commands, and it'll handle how we're going to handle those slash commands. So that's kind of what a monitor is. And then we have our task, which tasks are just basically anything that is being ran in the background. So if we need to do a quick calculation or something like that, we can just use tasks for that. There we go. So this is all of our caching. We'll add more. We're probably going to add some like middlewares, which if you don't know what middlewares, I suggest you try to read up on like Nux JS or some web frameworks that explains middleware. But basically it's just a kind of like a function that is happening between the execution and the activation periods. So if I were to call a command, then I'm going to have a function in between the command being called and then the command being execute, and that's the middleware. The middleware is just basically some checks, like admin checks or anything like that. That's kind of what a middleware is, but we're not going to do that right now. That's more of an advanced topic for later. Okay, so we have that. So you may be wondering, so since it's private, how are we going to get our commands and stuff? That's actually a very easy way of doing it. So all we gotta do really is we can create functions, or we can do a public get. So You may be wondering, okay, why am I making it why am I doing it this way? I could have done a public read only, which is true. That basically allows only this file to modify it, and then um, only other classes or files can get it. They can't set it. That is true. However, it doesn't look as good. It doesn't make it look smart. That's the best answer to it. But it's also just it's a bit easier doing it like this to separate them from each other because we can actually define the get a lot better because we might want some actions to be happening during that get. So what we're just going to do is a public get commands. Okay. And then in here we could just simply say return this dot commands. And then I can always do like a console.log commands, or like what would it be this dot commands. We could do that. Um, that is basically what get is. And then how I would treat this is if I were to go to my bot cache, right? Dot commands, then I have access to it already. But if you notice how if I were to set it, right? It's going to say two things. First one is probably going to talk about so it can't be assigned to read-only property. But the other one is probably going to be if I didn't have that there, it's the wrong type. That's the benefit of it being type sensitive. Okay, so we have that. We could do it this way, or we can also just simply do is a function. So we can do a public get commands or command, and then with this we can just say name string. We can't put the name or any kind of like I don't think you can. Let's find out because I remember that you usually don't do that. It's bad to have it, but let's see here. Let's see if you can, because it'll complain to me if I can't. It looks like you can't because yep. Oh wait, no, it needs to return something. So return this dot commands dot get name. So what is it complaining about now? Yep, cannot have parameters. So yeah, that's what it was. So yeah, you can't have parameters in there. That's why you use a function. Normally you just use the public get method only for like if you're just trying to get the data, like the full data, which we're not doing right now. We're just separating and we're trying to just get the command. So we'll get that a little bit later. First things first, we're actually going to be making our base events or base classes. So first one is going to be obviously base command.ts. Okay. So this one's going to be a hefty one, but that is totally fine. So this is where I get to talk about abstract. So we're going to do an export abstract class known as base command. And you know what? Let's actually make this a default abstract class. So we can do default here. Okay. There we go. So abstract, what it basically means is that it's a class that doesn't really have a body, and the body can be modified. So we could actually put in we could put a method in here, and then later on, like when we're creating the command, we can actually edit that method that we already have in there. If we didn't have abstract, that wouldn't be possible because we're basically making a whole new method here. But in this case, we're really not. We're just using that method and we're just modifying it. That's what abstract is. It just basically doesn't really have a body that is defined. It's just a body that can change. So we're going to have in here is we're going to do our private slash command or slash data. It's going to be omit, okay? Slash command builder, okay? We're going to add sub command. And we're also going to add sub command group. And there we go. Of course, it's going to say something like this, but that just basically means there's no initializer. We'll get to that very soon, but don't worry, there is going to be that error, but we're going to fix that real quick. Now we're going to do is a private disabled, okay? This is going to just be Boolean. This is just an option if we want to, which we will later on. If there's an error or there's a problem with a command or with a monitor or event or even a task, what we could do is set up an error handling where it automatically disables that portion of the bot to prevent it from like hurting itself. Because oftentimes, what will happen is if you don't do that, it's going to just keep on hurting the data. If we're like, let's say, our economics or like um, our money, right? We're gonna have like a wallet and all that stuff. Imagine that command where it's basically the data gets sent through, right? It goes to our database, but the rest of the command doesn't work. Now the command is going to keep on being used and used and used. It's going to mess with our data. We don't want that, so we have an option here to disable it, basically preventing it from hurting that data or hurting itself. That's the point of the disable here. Not a lot of developers have this in here because they are pretty confident in themselves or something else. I'm sorry if I'm roasting them, but I'm also roasting myself as well because I used to not do this until I realized, oh, this would probably be a great idea. What we're going to do is a private user permissions, and it's going to be a permissions resolvable. So permission resolvable right here, array. And we're just going to set that real quick. Self permissions, permission resolvable. Actually, I'm going to set this inside of our constructor. So now we're going to have a constructor. There we go. Then we can actually set everything up in here. So let's actually add in our constructor real quick. So we're going to have slash data. It's going to be omit slash command builder. Add sub command. Add sub command group. There we go. And then we're going to have disabled, which is going to be Boolean, but by default, we're going to have it be false. There we go. This slash, hold on, slash data is equals to slash data. This dot disabled is going to be equals to disabled. This dot user permissions is going to be an empty array. This dot self permissions is going to be an empty array. Okay, so constructor, we're going to construct our class, our variables, all that stuff. So there we go. Okay, so now that we have that, now let's just move on to making our invoke method. So we're just going to do is a public async invoke, and we're going to have ctx in here, and this is going to be an eddy for right now. We're going to change that in just a little bit, but we're going to just put in a string called, it's just going to say not implemented yet. And there we go. So we have that. Now let's just add some gets into this. So we're going to just do is a public get name, return this dot slash data dot name, and there we go. And we don't have to treat this like a method, we just treat it like a normal variable. That's the best thing about public get or just using the get keyword. Okay, now we're going to do a public get. We're going to do 2 JSON here. And we're just going to return this, if I can even type, return this slash data to JSON. And we can even do that. That works too. Public get data. Just have an option here just in case if we need to access it for some weird reason. We're going to get public disabled. Disabled. There we go. Let's get our public get user permissions. And self permissions. There we go. Now we're also going to add in 2 or actually 3 sets here real quick. Now let's do a public set disabled. And we also need to add here, we're just going to add disabled. And we're going to have that to be a Boolean. this disabled equals disabled. This is where I was talking about that disable system that we're going to have. That's where this plays into. We can actually set it without having to go into the command and do that. We can just do it throughout. Okay. We're going to have a public set. We're going to have user permissions. We're going to kind of do the same thing here. But this is going to go into the command and their constructor. You'll see what I'm talking about here soon. Perms, permissions, resolvable. This needs to be an array. Perms, there we go. Public set self permissions. Resolvable. There we go. Now we have all that figured out. This is basically our base command. So, let me show you real quick how that would look. So we're going to add a folder in here. It's going to be called commands, right? And in here we're going to have a folder called miscellaneous and a file called ping.ts. So it'll look like that, right? So in order to make a command, all we gotta do is export default class ping command extends a base command. There we go. Now we're gonna go into our constructor, right? And you'll notice there's an error here. What could this error mean? Well, the error basically means since we're extending a class, we need to initialize that class we're extending to as well. So you'll see even here, it derives a class must contain a super call. So we just say super here. This is the constructor of the base command. This is where we're going to initialize all of our kind of data here. So let's just do a new slash command builder. We're going to set name to be ping and set description to be pong. Right, there we go. We're not going to disable it, that's fine. And then in here, if we need to do any permissions, we could just say this, and then user permissions, and then we just say the permissions here. We can say administrator, we can say they have to manage guild, or something like that. That's where this will be handled. Okay? And then to create the actual method to invoke, we just say public async invoke, right? And we're going to add ctx, is going to be any. And then there we go, and we just put like await ctx in, reply, something like that. It'll be along those lines. So that's kind of how we would do it. So let's go into our context, and we're going to create the command context file. Okay, there we go. So we're going to be doing is export default class command context. Okay. In here, we're going to have a private interaction variable called command interaction. We're going to have also private args. I don't think I explained the reason for the underline or the underscore here in front. So this is just a habit of mine that I do, but it's also just derived from other languages that I program in. Basically, when something is not meant to be used, for example, like in a library or a package or dependency, oftentimes if it's not meant to be used, they'll put underscore because it's more unfriendly to type. Because you would have to do shift and you have to press your minus button to get the underscore. So it's meant to be saying, hey, you're not meant to be using this. Please don't use it, or some things might happen. In this case, I'm just using it to say, hey, this is private. This is not our actual get variable. This is just our actual internal variable for this class. That's the point of it. And then we're going to do a constructor here. We're going to add interaction, command interaction, and then args. Actually, we could just send in just an interaction. There we go. Make ourselves a little bit easier. There we go. And it's equals to interaction. And then this args is equals to interaction dot options. And we also have to say as command interaction option resolve. So let's talk about the as keyword, because some of you may not know what this is if you never programmed in TypeScript or any kind of like type sensitive languages. So the as keyword is basically what it's doing. is a typecasting. So typecasting is a form of like it's a method of changing one's type, for example. So in this case, right now, so interaction dot options, as you can see, it's basically the type is omit command interaction options resolver cache type, and it has some other options of it being something else, or actually that is the value that will display. Okay, so that is not going to match up with our type that we need. However, since the typing that is the omit command interaction option resolver, it can be casted into command interaction option resolver. So what we can do is use the as keyword, and we're going to say, hey, we're not going to have this to be whatever it is right now. We actually we're going to cast it as command interaction option resolver. So now this type, this args, is now accepting in the command interaction option resolver type. So that's kind of what the as keyword is doing here. It's just typecasting. It's changing one's type into something that we can use. There's some exceptions of where an as keyword will not work. One of them is if it cannot be casted into it. So example here would be a number into a string. If the number that you have, right, is doesn't have the quotes or anything like that, you're not doing a dot to string or anything like that, it cannot be casted into a string because it's not text, it's a number. So then it would actually throw an error there. So there's some exceptions basically with it, but it basically boils down to if it is able to be casted into that type. In this case, we can do this. Now what we're going to do is a public get interaction, just so we can get the interaction if we need it. There we go. Now we can add in our get args. Okay, public get args. There we go. Now let's add in our methods. So I normally like to have my get stuff, my get methods and sets at the bottom of the class. So what we're going to just do is an async send message to author options string, and I don't think I mentioned what this is doing, this typing here that I'm doing. Basically, we can define what a parameter or an argument's typing is by simply adding a colon and then saying what the type is. This is very similar to if you've written in Rust. This is kind of like that. There we go. Let dm equals await this dot interaction dot user dot create dm. So we have created our dm, and we're going to wait dm dot send. Nope. DM I mean dot send, and then we're going to add in our options there. There we go. You can also just say, oh, we're going to do is an async send message to channel. It'll be a message payload. It will also be a message create options. Yep, and it's going to return this interactions dot channel dot send options. So let me explain what the question mark means here. So question mark here basically means that hey, channels might be undefined. That's really all it is. If you notice here, or it's null. It's either undefined or null. Both of them are falsely, so they're treated kind of the same. So it could mean for null or it can mean for undefined. Falsely just means that it defaults to false if you do it into a if statement or any kind of like a conditional statement. It will always result into false. Then you have truthfully, which is something else, but it always just results true. That's basically what it is. But you can see your text-based channel or null. So we have this, but you can actually fix this. Sometimes you can't set something if the where it's coming from is undefined or null. You just simply put an exclamation mark here. Then basically what that is saying is that hey, we know that there's a chance of it being null or undefined, but we know for a simple fact that it's not going to be. So it's going to be this type. That's basically all it is. So if you ever run into that problem, that's the solution there. You just change the question mark to an exclamation mark, and it'll start working. You can do that, or if you do some stuff, which is just doing if statement, checking to see if it's null or not, and then returning that, and then the rest of your code will be showing as one type. Okay. Now we're gonna do async send message to reply. Message create options. Return reply and options. There we go. Okay, so you may be noticing here that I didn't put any publics or privates here. By default, it automatically becomes public, but it's always good practice to put public here. Um, some languages requires you to put a visibility modifier there, but TypeScript isn't that sensitive, but it's just always good to have it to do that. And then I am running into a problem here. What is my problem? My options. Well, because it's not. This is a different one. It's an interaction reply. Options. There we go. So we now have our command context. So we will just go back to our base command real quick, and we're going to change that type there. So ours is going to be right here. We're just going to change that to be now command context. There we go. Now let's go to ping. We're going to change that as well. But base command, or it's going to be command context, I mean. There we go. Now we have access to it. So we'll just say is ctx.send message to reply. Okay. And we'll just say pong. There we go. And that's basically how we will do it. Actually, we need to add in here. It has to be like this. It has to be content. Hold on. I messed it up somehow. Content. And then it needs to be pong. And then there you go. Okay. Let's just quickly do that. Format it a little bit, but okay. So we have that. It's not going to load or anything. It's not going to work because we haven't told it what to do within the cache. So let's go back to our cache folder here, or cache file. Okay. And we're going to add a few things, but I'm also going to quickly set my logger. So I'm going to add logger into my cores. You can do this or not. That's fine. Whenever you see logger.info or anything like that, it's just a console.log for you if you're not using a one. I'm just going to copy paste this. I always use this one, but I'll let you pause it, figure out what you want to do. Winston is a great one because it allows you to modify it. You can customize it pretty well in different things. Okay. So I have my logger here. It's all initialized and everything. Okay, let's go back to my cache here. Now let's just start. So first things first, we're going to load our commands. So we need to load everything in. So what we're going to do is actually, before we can even do that, let's first create the method. But async load commands. Okay, so before I can even do this, there's a problem here, and that's just with pathing. There's an easier way of doing this, and that's using enum. So let's go into our const here. And what we're going to do is an export enum, and it's going to be folder path. It'll look like that. Yeah. So I already kind of know what these paths are going to look like, but we're going to just put them in. So our module folder is going to be called modules. Our root folder is going to be src bot. Now our command folder is going to be commands. Our event folder. And we're going to have our monitor folder. Oh, I spelled that wrong. And our task folder. Okay, there we go. So that's what it'll look like here. Now let's go over here. So now the nice thing about enums is that if we put it in, it's like a normal variable. We change the variable value, and then it'll change it everywhere else. That's the point of the enum. Okay. So let's go back to our cache real quick, and we're going to create some private methods here. So we're going to create a private create path, because it's all going to be the same thing. Why are we just recreating the path again? Which is put in one method and then use that. So that's what we're doing. Okay. So we're going to return /folder path, and it's going to be .root folder path .modules folder, and then we're going to add dir. And there we go. Okay. Now we're going to add in is the private fixed path, because there is a problem here. Basically what the problem is once we get our pathing from globe, it actually converts the forward slashes that we have and puts them into backslash. However, the problem with that is that our import thing, as you can see up here, this is how we import classes, our dependencies, our packages into here. In JavaScript terms, it would be const, then the name equals requires, and then the parameter is the package or the file path. Here it's just import, but the problem with that is our import doesn't like backslashes, so we actually need to convert those into forward slashes. So what we're going to do is a let new path is equals to path.replace. It's going to be /g dots and regex. So it's basically saying, hey, we're going to look for any of these backslashes, okay, and then we're going to convert those into slashes. Then we're going to return a new path.replace, and we're going to replace folder path.root, and we're going to just put in 2 dots, meaning we're going to back out of this folder here. Simple as that. Okay, now that we have that, let's go to our load commands here. And we're going to say logger.info. I like to do this. And we're just going to say I need to import it. Add .info. Okay, loading commands. There we go. And we're going to say const pth, which is path. This dot create path, right? Folder path dot command folder. Okay, const files equals globe dot sync pth. Okay, and then what's before we do anything, we're going to do is console dot log our files real quick, so you can see what it looks like with globe. Okay, so I'm going to quickly make a new file. It's going to be in just the src folder. It's going to be called index. This is going to be our main file, right? We're going to say is we're going to do is this, because you can't technically async something right away. You actually have to create a method or something like that. So this is what we're doing. And we're going to await bot cache dot load commands. There we go. And we're going to see what that looks like. So now what we do is npx ts node src index.ts. Okay. Now it's going to think about it. It's going to figure out everything for us, and it should run for us. So let's see here. Okay, so that's what it looks like. This is what I was talking about, because it converts it into backslashes, but it adds 2 of these in. So we actually need to convert that into front slashes. That's the point of it. Yep. So we're going to go back to our cache here. We can get rid of this. We don't need it anymore. Then we're going to say is a for let file of files. So we basically want to get each file within the files that globe found. Okay. And we're going to do is const default. There's a reason why we added that default in there. Await import this fixed path file. There we go. And we're going to say const command is equals to a new cd, which is abbreviation for command, as a base command. We don't need that there. I need to fix this real quick, so we're going to add base command there. Okay. So if this dot commands dot has command dot name, this is just a check to see, hey, do we already have this command in here? If we do, then we don't want to do anything to it. Okay. This dot commands dot set command dot data, or actually we could just say name here, and then command. There we go. Now this, we're just going to say logger dot info successfully loaded this commands dot size commands. There we go. There we go. Now if I were to just run this, you'll see our result. And there we go, successfully loaded one command. We would know if it didn't work because it would actually throw an error at us. And there's a reason for this default here. So let me go to our ping command. So our default here, what default really does is that it says, hey, when we call on this file, we're actually calling on this class or this variable. So we're basically referencing this class right away instead of having to pull it out. That's the point of the default there, is to automatically get the class. We can add other, we can like export other classes here, right? Like something, right? But it will always default to this ping command because it's the default class. It's the default thing that we're going to grab. That's the point of the default here. So that works perfect. Okay. So now let's go ahead and let's make our events. Okay, so we're gonna make a base event.ts. Okay. So in here, we're gonna make another export default abstract. If I can spell, it's gonna be abstract class base event. Okay. Private name string. We're gonna have a private disabled boolean, and we're also gonna add in is only once. This basically is something with Discord's events. Basically what it does is if we say only once, or we say once, it basically only runs the event once. It doesn't continuously run it. So once it executes, then it's done so. It doesn't continue more. Okay. Constructor. So we have name string. Only once, and that's going to be a boolean, but by default it's going to be false. And then disabled, which will be a boolean and default as false. Name. There we go. And then in here we're going to say in public invoke. Actually, we need to make this async. And we're going to do dot 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 args. This basically the three dots, what it basically means is that there could be a number of arguments. We don't know how many there is. There's just going to be quite a few, or there might be one. We just don't know. So we can change this however we want. That's basically what it means. Okay, and then we're just going to say not yet implemented. Public get name dot name. Return this, disable, get only once. Only once. There we go. And we also want to add in here as a public set disabled. Disabled boolean. There we go. So that's our base event right there. Let's just quickly make one. So we're going to go into our modules. We're going to go into our events. We're going to add in our ready event. So ready.ts. Okay. There we go. and we're going to do an export default class ready event extends a base event. Okay, constructor, and we need our super. The name is going to be ready, and ready is only going to be ran once, so it's going to be true. There we go. Public async invoke, right? And ready doesn't have any parameters that it passes through, so we don't need to do anything else. And we can just simply say logger dot, I need to get my logger, if I can type, right? There we go. Dot info. Bot is ready. Okay, there we go. And now we can go back to our cache here. Okay, and let's start loading in our events here. So it's going to be pretty much the exact same thing as loading in our commands. So it's going to be a public async load events. Logger.info loading events. Const pth, this create path, and this is going to be folder path event folder. Const files equals globe.sync, and it's going to be pth for let file files. You can also use const if you want to. Const is fine to use. Const file of files is fine. Const default evt await import this dot fix path file. Okay. Const event is equals to new evt as base command. Not base command. It means base event. And let's real quick go up here and address this. This is going to be base event. There we go. If not, this event.has event.name, then this events dot set event dot name and event. There we go. So now we can go back to our index here, and let's just add in await bot cache dot load events. I did forget my logger right there, so let's go back to my cache here. Logger.info successfully loaded this events.size events. There we go. Now that we have all that done, let's just make sure it's working. We should be loading commands and loading events. There we go. Okay. So let's start actually getting our bot online. So we're going to create a new file called .env. We're going to have, we're going to say like Discord configuration. Okay. Discord bot token. Okay, there we go. And I'm also going to add in another file for you guys because I'm going to have a I'm going to have a get repository for this. So you can see how this is supposed to look. There we go, Discord bot token. There we go. Now let's go into index real quick. We're going to go to the top and we're going to say require, because we can use JavaScript stuff. We can because it's built on top. So we can just say require.env.config. There we go. So now that's all enabled, and all we gotta do really is just go down here. We'll say discord.login, and we'll say process.env.discord.bot.token. Okay. So now we need to go into here, and basically what you have to do here is put your token in and no spaces. So it could look like that. I'm going to pause real quick, and I'm going to put my token in. So give me 1 second here. Okay, and I am back. So I also add another .env file or variable, and it's going to be called dev guild id. This is for when we're doing our slash commands. When we're deploying them, we're going to have them deploy to our guild first. So you just put your guild ID into there. But now that we have that, all we gotta do is go in here and let's just quickly run it. Actually, before we can even do that, we actually need to handle it. So let's go back to our cast real quick, and we need to go and handle the event. So let's do that. I already have this already created, so I'm just going through here. But okay, so we're gonna handle it here. So public async handle events, and we're gonna say the name. So it's gonna be name string, right? And we're gonna have a try catch in here. This is kind of part of our error handling. And we're gonna return null. So this is something that some people don't know when it comes to error handling or a try catch. You could do is return null, and what it does is it prevents the bot or your program from actually crashing itself. It's a nice like safety net there. So this will prevent it from actually crashing itself and going offline. It'll just continue working, but it catches that error. So that's the nice thing about it. Now, is it the safest thing to do? Not always, but for the case that we want it to do, yes, it is. Let event equals this events.get name. Okay. Now we need to do is check if event even exists. So if event does not exist, then we're gonna say longer.warn event name doesn't exist. Okay. And we're gonna return here. Okay, so here's something I want to explain here. What we want to do with our if statements is always a good practice to do it this way, but it's always to search for the nots. There's a reason why you want to search for the nots. It makes your code look cleaner, but it also makes more sense because at the end of this, we're we're literally going to just do this. Is we're just going to do discord.on, and we're going to like do our events in there. It doesn't make sense to be nesting it inside of if statements, and it doesn't look good. So if we search for the knots, we could just keep this in the base scope here, within the try scope, basically. So that's where we're looking for the knots. So disabled is a knot because if it is if the event is disabled, we don't want to run it. So that's a knot right there. Okay, we're just going to return that, and we're going to say logger.warn event.name is disabled. Okay. Now that we have that, we could just do is if event.only once is true, discord.once, okay, event.name, and we can say async args. It's going to be await event dot invoke, and then args, and then else discord.on event.name async args await event.invoke args. Now you can go in here and not have the name in there and just say I want to run all these events here, but there are some cases where we just we want to only run certain ones. So, but for right now, we're just gonna go into my index here, and we're just gonna say here, handle events, and we're gonna say is bot cache dot. We need to have a something to allow us to get our events. So let's do our gets at the bottom here. So public get events. I would say all events. Okay. And we're gonna just say return this dot, or we could just simply, no, you know what? We could just do a get here. We could do a public get events. return this events. There we go. Okay, that's totally fine to do here. Dot events dot for each x, and we're gonna say await bot cache dot handle event x dot name. There we go. Oh, we also need a async this, so async. There we go. Now that we have that, our ready event does exist here. All we gotta do here is now run it. Okay, let's make sure it's working here. Bot is ready. Our ready event happened, and this is the bot I'm attached to right now, and it's working. It's online, so that's perfect. Okay, so let's go back to my. Oh, that's the wrong one. Right here. Okay. So now we have that. Let's work on our slash commands, and that'll be the end of all of this for this episode. It's going to be a long one, but it's so then we can get all these topics out of the way and show how to do everything. So let's now go to our utilities here. So we're going to go to utilities. We're going to create a new file called deployer. This will deploy all of our commands into Discord. So I'm just actually going to copy and paste this in. I'll explain it. There we go. And this, so there's this command here. We're actually going to call this just commands here. Actually, no, we can leave it as. Do I? Nah, I want to do that. And we're going to go into cache here. And we're just going to add on top of here public get commands. Return this commands. There we go. And this is not a method. There we go. So what we're doing here is we have a variable called commands. It's basically a REST post API chat input application command JSON body array. This is just the data for slash commands. It's going to be put in there. So we're not putting the actual base command class in here. We're just putting the slash command data into there. So if we go to our base command here, you'll notice right here where it says slash data, that's the data we're putting into the deployer. Okay? And then we're going to create a REST variable here. So we just say const REST equals a new REST version. The version is going to be 10. I think the version might be 11 right now. I'm not too sure. But 10 is the stable ones, the LTS. And then we're going to put our Discord bot token in here. So if you don't have this as string, like that, it'll throw an error because .set token, it needs to be a string. With the variable, like environment variables, it's string or undefined. So we're just going to say as a string. You could also just put an exclamation mark there, but I like seeing words more, so we're just going to do as string. There we go. Now we're going to go here. So we have a function here that's running async. Don't forget to add these parentheses at the end here, because if you don't add that there, it will not work. Okay, we're doing a try catch here. We have our little logger error, and then return null. And then we just have some loggers here, and then we're just saying const data is going to be equals to await rest.put routes application guild commands discord user.id in here, and we're also putting process our dev guild ID as well. And then we're just putting another parameter in here, which is a object. It's just body is commands. That's what it is. So very simple to do. And that's all you need to do. You can copy this in the Git repository as well. But we're just going to move along. We're going to go to ready here, and we're just going to simply do is await import. We're going to find it, so we're going to back out a little bit, and then we're going to go to our utilities and deployer. There we go. So now, if we run this, like it is, it's going to deploy our bot. There we go. Started refreshing one application command, successfully reloaded one application command. So if we go back to our, actually that is the wrong one that I just realized. So give me a second, I need to go quickly fix that. Okay, now I'm back. Okay, so I fixed my dev guild ID because it was the wrong one, I realized. But now we have it there. Now if we go back to here, all we gotta do is slash ping, and it's not gonna work because we haven't had an event to create the interaction or something like that and handle it. So let's quickly do that real quick. So we need to go back to our cache here. Okay. And then we're gonna handle our event. So I'm gonna put this actually right under the load for the commands. Public async handle command name string, and ctx is gonna be a command context. There we go. So this one is a bit long, but that is totally fine with us. So we're going to catch error, and then we're going to say logger.error, error. There we go. So we're going to let command is equals to this commands dot, I've messed it up, but commands, I want it to be the underscore one. Okay, dot get name. Okay. Now we need to check to see if the commands work or exist. So we're going to say is if command does not exist, logger.warn. Actually, we don't need to say that because if it doesn't exist, then actually since it is a slash command, we do want to worry about it. If it was a text-based command, then we do not need to worry about that. Doesn't exist. There we go. If command disabled. Okay. Now we're gonna wait is interaction. I mean CTX because I don't. Oh no, I was wrong. It needs to be interaction command here. So it's gonna be interaction command context because we're going to create the context in here. So wait interaction dot. Oh, why did I put command context there? It needs to be command interaction. There we go. And then we're gonna say reply empirical is true. Content command name is disabled at the moment. Please try again later. There we go. And it will just return. Beautiful. Now let's handle our we'll do our permissions in a different video, okay? So we're just going to quickly create the context. So we're going to say let ctx equals a new command context, and that's just going to be interaction. Okay. Now we'll just await command dot invoke ctx. There we go. Okay. Now that we have all that figured out, now we can create an event for it. So we're going to create a folder called interaction. And inside this interaction, we're going to create a file called create.ts. So this will be equivalent to interaction create. Okay, export default class interaction create event, and it's going to extend base event. Yep, there we go. Constructor super interaction create public async invoke, and interaction create does include a parameter. It's called interaction. It's the type of interaction. There we go. So now all we gotta do is see. So if interaction dot is command, right? So if it is a command, then we're just going to say return here, and we're going to say await bot cache dot handle command. It's going to be interaction dot command name, in interaction. There we go. So that will work. So if we were to rerun this, right? There we go. Load to events, bot is ready. So now if I were to try that slash command again, so slash ping, and there we go, we got Pong. So that's all for this video. It's just showing you the how we're going to set it up and getting you started. So now you can make some commands and stuff, slash commands. Later in the next video, we're going to talk about monitors, how we're going to use monitors and set that up. We're going to also add our permissions, our commands, so we can handle like administrative commands and then commands that's kind of sensitive to being touched by just members. So that's what we'll do. But that's all for this video. I'll see you all later. Now I have to figure out how to stop this.